Oh, my friends, welcome. We are here at the SightShift Podcast, and this one is going to be a rambunctious episode. I already know it. My friend Dan Rockwell in the house of Big Kitty Labs. Dan,
It's good to be here.
so glad to have you here, man. So to set this up in a way of just giving people some context, tell us what you're about, what Big Kitty Labs is about, and we'll dive in from there.
Well, first I just want to say you look great. Today I just want to say you look good. I've got this kind of new thing I'm going on with here, a little bit of change, a little bit of revolution coming down. But yeah, Big Kitty Labs, what's that all about? Well, we're basically a software development agency in the Central Ohio area that does A to Z software development for small businesses and startups, enterprise companies, and we do research and R&D, and we work with universities. We kind of do just about everything. We also do a lot of design work, a lot of connecting. I'm a little animated at times. Sometimes I look different than others. Sometimes my teeth are just so damn beautiful. You know what I'm saying? And so as you have these abilities, you have the ability to sort of apply humor with context and a little bit of mastery and create connection. And that creates momentum for everyone.
Man, what's so fun for me is to use the new format of the podcast to introduce people to people that became close friends through the process of working together, because I got to know their heart, their vision, and everyone shows up in their own way. But for those that are listening, Dan is animated and it's dope as fire. So people have to check out the YouTube release or Spotify if we get the video on that.
Yeah.
And it's such a great picture, literally, of what my experience with you has been like. You are like hooking up to a fire hose of the external future and the internal imagination. And you turn that stream on, man. It's awesome.
It's kind of funny. It's like I do software development, and that's what I'm known for. But I'm really a futurist philosopher on Next, and I really kind of focus around the core notion of manifestation, and that's sort of my that's the place that I thrive in. That's the place that doesn't always make sense. It doesn't cater to the business people, right? There's a part of me that I'm very defiant on the notion of why something exists, other than the fact that the human came up with it and decided it should. You know what I'm saying? So there's a little bit of a divinity just in the choice of what we brought into this world, let alone whether or not it belonged in this world. You know what I mean? So I sort of celebrate that, and whoever I connect to, kind of helps out. I had a really good friend the other day tell me that, he said, Dan, you are the journey. People come to sort of step through your aura to see a potential chance at things, and that's it's something you always know, but you don't realize until you actually you have to be in high frequency, though. This is one of these things where it can't be a low frequency sport. You have to get into some place that's got a high frequency in order to really see all the patterns that may actually tell you, where stuff is going.
Yeah, you're an aura and a slipstream. For me, it's like both. And I think, tell me if this doesn't strike you as a comparison, or maybe I'm just trying to make myself cool like you. You use really software development as the vehicle to deliver these futuristic, expansive encounters with you. That just the software development is the vehicle we're putting it into.
Yeah,
is that a way of saying that?
Yeah, it's kind of like. Well, what's interesting, Chris, is I'm a remixer. Anything you give me, I remix. So, for example, most people want to come to me and give me their idea, so I remix up my head and I sort of tell them a perspective on it. When it comes to manifesting my own ideas, I've always been obsessed with the limits of my manifestation skill set, meaning where are my limits? And I will say that things were really pretty set in stone until about 2017, 2018. In terms of understanding what your limits were, and AI arriving on the scene is really is nuking that whole thing from orbit. It's the level of means that we have today is tripling every 90 days, and the capability that's within you, or what I would say is sort of the prophecy of someone within them, it gets, you know, you have more and more capacity than you ever had before, yet you probably have no idea that it's there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. So I want to connect a bridge and then make a comment about the capacity. The bridge to connect, because I still didn't get my cool points. I got to get those real quick.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing that you do with software development, I think of SightShift. That's what we do with leadership development. It's our way or my way, but it's a team, so it's ours, both and of being in a place where we get to expand the human capacity as much as possible.
Yep.
That's the vehicle's just leadership development. And having worked with a few executives in robotics and coaching them, it has blown my mind on what's happening with AI. But you actually blow my mind on that more, because you're like not committed to a specific strand or ideology in it. You're just like touching all of it.
Yeah.
What would blow our minds the most right now that just people could get in the slipstream of your futuristic abilities about AI?
Probably one of the first thing to probably keep in mindset is that whatever you think is possible is done. So that's the first thing to think about. Like, you're thinking about, wouldn't it be cool if you could, and just say done. It's like, already done. Okay. And then, then the next challenge is sort of to think about what you think would be impossible, but still sort of apply. So for example, I think it would be impossible that a building could rapidly change its physical texture based on my current feeling. Like, yeah, it could project the texture, but it couldn't change the actual atomic structure of the building. I think that's impossible. And now what's really cool about that impossible is to sort of stop it in that time and try to think about what year you're in, and try to think about how far you jumped, and how trying to figure out your context of where you're at versus where the future's at. Because if you can understand how close they really are together, the way I see it, and the way I think that more people will begin to see it, one, there's a gold rush already going on in terms of opportunity things out there. There is there's more opportunities and downsides. There's less money out there for like the VC for you. However, there's less money that you need, right? You know, so it's a completely different. It's sort of like we're going into the grand age of guerrilla hustle, but it's, you know, but with Jarvis. So you and Jarvis are dropped in the middle of LA, you know, with $5, right, and unlimited bandwidth and a good phone, and you have 90 days to make as much money as possible. I'm willing to bet you that if you have a decent mindset, you could do pretty good at that challenge. You know what I mean? And that what's crazy is that we can describe these things as like a TV show or game, but that would be something that we would all watch, right? Two, we want to know about sort of the patterns of, you know, what they use in technology, because the technology is just getting more capable. But the question is are we capable yet? Like, we have so many people that are probably not expanding into the mindset where they could even consider it. And then the problem is once they do consider it, they're basically going to come back and give you a story from 1984. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It means they're not even in the era of their possibility. And if they're a business owner, I mean, this is a huge thing. They could miss the window of either A, government money hanging out, asking them to innovate, which is definitely coming, or more so B, the fact that there's somebody already right behind them that they don't see that's basically about to eat their trajectory, right? And then ultimately they start to feel the squeeze, right? We can't seem to hire people, but at the same time we have to let go of people. And then it's like, we got to sell that building. And you kind of go from having a great business to, well, at least the land is valuable. You know what I mean? Wouldn't that suck to sort of build this empire and then basically to only look at everything you've done from the value of what's valuable on the land, not of the people and the sweat and of the imagination that was spent to manifest on that land. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I hear that from people. It's like, well, the land will be worth something. And you know, it's like, oh, you've already
I know, you've already given out.
sold the vision short. You've already sold the vision short. And that for me is what's so powerful about, I think, what you do with people. It's this way of waking them up to a more consuming vision, a more whole vision.
And I'm constantly constantly dumbfounded and reminded by AI every day. I feel like every day I wake up, AI goes, "Hey man, how you doing? I just want to let you know I learned how to do gymnastics, somersaults, and like this. And you want to do anything in that space, I can do it for you." I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. And then it'll come back next minute. And, oh, by the way, I learned how to not only produce reggae music perfectly, but I can do full soundtrack orchestrations. And by the way, I'm free for like the first 4 years. You're like, okay. You know what I mean? So it's like every day I'm like, and it's, it's what's funny is it's the same kid. AI comes over. "Hey, I just want to let you know, Chris, I learned how to read all the religions, and I can actually sit down and actually assemble a full, orchestra of people to debate with them. If you want to talk with them tonight, we'll just do our own 600-year World's Fair tech talk at home tonight. If you're cool around 7, you know what I mean? It's like, you know what I mean? So it's like AI has this ability for you to just bridge things, and you're getting more. And what's great is that it's not controlled by anyone yet. And that's why it's really exciting. All the scientists are doing it. So everything is like, what's the business model? They don't care. They're just making. And that is a great time again. It's Renaissance. That's a Renaissance time.
Wow. It just happened again. You took it somewhere that is even more exciting for me, and street cred here for people listening. I remember us meeting in a coffee shop. It was like early 4th of March, 2020 something. And you were like, "Chris, all the VC money for anything pre-COVID is like done. It's all changed. It's just already happened. It's done." And it was so on point, man, with what we saw play out in the market over and over. But here's the thing that I feel so much. I have this creative generation within me. The more I learn how to step into the flow of ideation and the connection of ideas and where I'm interested in subjects, the more combinations occur, the more connections occur, all these nodes. And I feel like I'm able to conceive of, sketch out, and even produce an early shape to a creative work. And at that point, I'm like, man, I would love to have AI to hand this off to that would familiarize itself with my thinking and works, the hundreds of thousands of words I have around the topics I care about, and then go. And even probably more than that on the computer. But what would be cool is something you just laid out. If I could generate all of these consciousnesses that I could have conversations with.
Yep.
Because this is a to-do list I just added to my to-do today to repeat for a while. My most expansive, thorough work that's unpublished, like, it feeds me. So I want to go back and reread the notes I have on it because I don't hear people talking about these ideas.
Yeah.
And I could produce these avatars to converse
Not only
with.
that, but you could basically reread it and also sort of re-talk about it and sort of capture another transcript about what you wrote, and then feed that into an AI type system that would then use that as a basis. And let's say basically it creates a basis of McAllister 1, let's say Shift 1 or whatever you want to call it. And then you can add that to a base algorithm of sort of like general mental health wellness goodness, right? And then you can connect that to general receptive, kind person building rapport system. So now you have 3 modules that sort of relate to 3 different sort of AI models. You build them all into one, and now you have basically a version of your book or a version of your content that is not 100% you, but it could be an interim you when you're not there 100%. So these are the things that every company should be thinking about, especially companies right now that have a lot of legacy knowledge. Like they're the only company that makes the left-handed bolt for the XYZ company, right? They have legacy knowledge that's probably not codified really in a lot of books, and it's more between the practitioners of the space. Again, kind of stuff you're going to do too. So it's like that's really crystal tasty knowledge that should be captured over time, either via shows or everything else. And that's the era we're going into, is an era that says, whatever you would like to do, dear human, let me know, and I will give you every AI tool possible to allow you to enable yourself. And that's actually going to hit the workforce. We see that already in the workforce problem because we have people who are deciding not to go back to work. Why? Well, because I figured out how I can do a hustle. And a lot of people think that's just the DoorDash economy, but it's not. It's a decentralized approach toward hustle, meaning I can work on multiple things to get whatever my requirements are to get by. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. It's we have a society shift happening alongside the sort of the new world hustle. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's AI is not going away, and it's empowering everybody. And I think what's a little daunting for me sometimes is to think about how much it excites me, and I'm using a budget of like less than $1,000, right? So, someone with 10 million is having a blast. You know, so what are they doing, right? You know what I mean? The capability just goes through the roof. So, but then again, Chris, this is where the other thing happens is that access and capability doesn't always equate to a level of intrinsic
creativity or
beauty
novelty
without talent, right? So you need a core talent to really manifest through the true arc. Like if you don't have a core talent, all you really do is kind of shuffle. So part of our lives are still going to be based on that path to find out our core focus. But when you're ready, Jarvis and AI, man, boom, you could do a lot when you're ready.
That human interface is what's going to be, Anthony Bourdain, the chef, right?
Yep.
So I would rather have Anthony Bourdain's cooked steak behind a cheap backyard grill that's the cheapest of the cheap than somebody who doesn't know what they're doing.
Yep.
However, put Anthony Bourdain in a full kitchen with the ultimate tools.
Yep.
Let's see what he might create. And really, AI now is catching up with the human potential.
Yep.
The blistering speed that we can ideate on and create and connect. And I don't mean just connect people. I'm talking about connecting ideas.
Yeah.
What for you do you find that like business leaders, founders, owners are coming to you and you're sad that they're the most limited by in their thinking?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think, people right now are sort of in the squeeze of COVID and, I think people are going after what's their obvious business sort of vector choice to stay alive versus put money in for R&D. There's not enough people taking chances, you know what I mean? So if there's not enough people taking chances, it's hard to see. And it's not to say, like we're doing the same thing. I mean, we all have to sort of buckle down and get through this recession sort of piece right here. But I will say that I think leadership is actually open to new R&D concepts because I think it's hard to avoid the new wave. Everything either happening on the crypto side, stuff around NFT side, especially if you're in anything around hospitality or retail, you're going to be leveraging that mechanism one way or another just because it's not going to go away. So you have to, but not everyone's figuring out like the path. So there's a lot of sort of like kind of hunkering down. I'm in observation mode. Maybe we're in, let's refine our methods internally. And you see that too in the ecosystem of the tools. We have no code tools, and then we have there's a lot of new tools that are sort of, they're bridgers. They take this tool, they bridge to that tool, they bridge to this tool whenever an email goes out. So there's a new sort of modular thinking, a Lego modular thinking about things that's going on online. But this is all happening for people that don't want to spend real money, right? And then the people that have money are, I'd say the mid-range folks are probably doing the most infrastructure changes to their technologies and their platforms. The Fortune 500 folks are in a panic. In the sense, maybe I'd say the Fortune 1000 folks are in a panic because they don't know what they need to be doing in order to stay relevant for the next, 3 years. And a lot of that's going to be metaverse. A lot of it's going to be augmented reality and VR. VR is probably being most widely adopted from sort of like an education, maybe benchmark perspective, but it's not seen as like a way to sell just yet, or something like that. It's seen more as an HR type of thing. And AR is still sort of being defined as a marketing gimmick, but it could be a very effective gimmick. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening.
What makes the future so attractive and compelling to you? Why do you think you love running to the future?
I love the newness of discovery. I love the fact that I can get right on the horizon and sort of see I love searching for just, a word and a niche, and the most, like, I'm always looking at the last 90 days across everything. And I look for the sites that sort of catch it. You see a lot of sites that are engineered to sort of propagate a message, and you can tell those sites versus more authentic, deep dive site. I like to find people who are doing research and sort of doing their own exploration into a space and then becoming sort of an authority on that space. I love to find these sort of, who are the new Jacques Cousteaus in, say, design? Who's the new Jacques Cousteau in, quantum? And I like to, where is the find edge of the trend in technology? And then I also like to look at it in the fashion. I like to go look in that space and go, okay, what's sticky there? And then go look at architecture. Okay, what's happening in there? The AI tools, especially in the art space, allow me to really I could do brainstorm manifestation now that I could never do before. And it's godly in my hands. You know what I mean? It feels godly. It's like, it's one of these things where it's like, now that I have it, I will never be without it in a lot of ways, because it allows me to connect with the AI and have an army of 7 million artists that will. Some of them know the basics, and then a lot of them know the abstract. Yeah. And when you can get the AI to sort of explore the abstract with you, then you start connecting with the AI and you start to understand maybe how it thinks, which then allows you to think about more about not so much how you should think, but it helps you start to think about how AIs kind of work. They're very narrow. I mean, they're not all godly right now. You know what I mean? They're really specific narrow categories. There is no generalized, AI out there sort of roaming. There are going to be some really amazing capabilities coming up. Like, for example, why are we coding anymore? When if we have an AI, why can't we just say, imagine a company like Uber, and it just builds it, all of it. You know what I mean? It knows enough about what the company is. It knows it probably has an app, these mapping stuff. Like, it knows the parameters. Why am I coding anything? Why am I coding a website when I should just be able to tell the computer, go launch a website, make it cool?
It's doing it for art, so it can do it for code, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's what's coming next on the art side, is the video side, where we're going to be able to like describe a chase scene and say, well, do it in 2 renders. Give me a little bit of Scorsese, but also give me Lucas, except the 72 version, right? And it's going to go and find that version of Lucas, right?
Because it can do that on still images. I mean, for people that aren't aware, we're talking about Mind Journey, DALL-E. What's the third one of the big 3?
And DALL-E 2. And then the big one now is Stable Diffusion. Supposedly Stable Diffusion is a version of DALL-E 2 that's been sort of leaked or available to the public now or something.
Yeah. And so what's shocking to me, even in like corporate spaces, they're not even familiar with GTP3 and what's available for copy ideas, much less what's happening 5 stages beyond that.
Well, that's what I mean. You're going to be so behind. So behind.
And it's not to be negative at all, but I remember like when I started traveling around and speaking more to companies, and I would just start asking and this is before like the big future waves hit, do you know who Seth Godin is? Do you know who Tim Ferriss is? And, this is like mid 2010s and they didn't, So there was a conversation that was happening that they weren't even connected to. And so, if people are listening to this,
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. If people are listening to this and going, wow, I'd love to tap into this some more, what would be the top place you would send them other than, of course, your Twitter spaces?
Yes, my Twitter spaces. Well, I would say just hit me on email first, because I am trying to build, I am trying to do a new network. I have a new pet project I'm working on called the Syndicate, which is a group online that I've sort of formed up with actually a group of comics. It started as a group of comics first, and then it has expanded, and we're up to probably 60, 70 members now, with a lot of good success stories of how we help each other. But probably, finding me online, dan@bigkittylabs.com, obviously, and then Lucy Speak. That's probably the best way, because I really want to know what you're trying to do. So one problem that I think everyone has in this space, and I do this all the time too, is like, I'm always looking for the better, shinier tool. And sometimes you can go through 5 of them before you find out whether or not you ever find what you're looking for, right? So I think the best thing to do is just tell me what you're looking for, and then I definitely would have recommendations. And then you can always explore the space too. I mean, there's so much out there, but I do have favorites, and reasons why I like them too. So
yeah. Okay. So I want a thoughtful question that I have to ask you to put some skin on, so to speak, people connecting to who you are, and then a fun question. Thoughtful question is, because a lot of the people that listen to this are familiar with SightShift, figure that shift out.
Yep.
You could have a project manager in Colorado, somebody in Finland, everybody wherever.
Yep.
And they might hear this episode and be like, okay, so Dan is who he is.
Yep.
But to show that we're all human, you went through the process with me a number of years ago. What drew you to do that work, and what still stays with you today as a result?
Well, I will say that I'm changing. I'm not. Software development is something that I'm familiar with, and I'm always going to be aware of, and I'll be able to sort of be in that space. But I'd say the love is moving, and that's being reflected in how I'm sort of my new approach on companies a little bit. Is I really believe in. I believe in a couple of things. One, we're sort of in the eternal now. And if you understand your means at the now, you have a lot of things that are in your book of wonder, of like, would I ever do that? And there's a part of me that says, why not do more things at the same time versus focus? And I think focus really should be directed at the soul, less the soul and maybe your current manifestation goal. But if you can build a parallel mindset in terms of how you execute concepts, then it starts to make sense to put things on the conveyor belt in my mind. So because I love media and because I love stories, and that's how I sort of got into a lot of this, I'm building that side of the business alongside the kitty side of the business. And there's 2 funnels there, and that kind of works, right? And then the other piece I'm trying to do is more on my personal side, where I'm sort of replicating my art and exploring the stand-up comedy space, which is, also connected to my books, which I'm actually trying to wrap up a book right now too. And it's like, I think the biggest pursuit I have is the manifesting of now. So I'm sort of, every day I sort of have a new benchmark of 3 things to make. I don't care what they are, but you will always manifest. You will continue to manifest, and you'll question less. We've destroyed so many things because we second guess, or it's not on brand. What we don't realize is that for every moment we debate whether or not we're on brand, our customers actually debate it times 1,000, right? Because we debated, right? So if we lose the relevance, if we lose the temperature in people's lives, then you're already cold again, right? So you have to get to the center and connect and everything else. So I'm trying to focus more on that, and I think with the software development is going to always be part of me, but that's not what gets me out. What gets me up in the morning is the newness that I can have and how I can celebrate it. That's one of my first ways of manifesting for like my group of friends online is I've created a video series, right? I created this True Degen Tales, which is just a way of sort of reframing my friends through movies and telling of the complexities of our lives. But now that we're up to like 12 trailers, it's like, this is something, right? We've manifested something. And that's cool. You get momentum from the manifestation, you get the momentum. No one's asking you about whether or not the business. You don't care about the business model. If 100 people showed up in your backyard every day and put on a barbecue, would you question that, or would you just accept the divinity that you've been chosen? Right?
Yeah, and lean into that moment. One of the one video you had tagged me on, I retweeted. I was like, "That's the most validating video ever." It spoke to every issue, and because I am in the slipstream of Dan's consciousness, just to connect the dots. What I've heard you comment on is what drew you to the work that we did together, and what you were doing already, and what you've continued to do is this idea of expansion. You know, there's more in you to give to the world. So glad to hear about the book. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was the big takeaway from our work together that you think people that are listening to this, that have been through the program, could be encouraged with?
I think the big thing is, the first thing, Chris, is that you were just like, you're open for like whatever came through the pipe. I think when the first time you sit down with a CEO coach like you, there's a nervousness of like, sort of like, what information is going to be relevant to the conversation? Like, is it just this problem with the company? Is it my current drinking problem, or is it my stress? Right? You know what I mean? It's like you have to, you're in a confessional at first, right? And that's a hard thing to do as a leader, because you're used to compartmentalizing so many things and worried about them, later on. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, everyone will get in that chopper and they will fly back to the base and be fine. Now you have to go back in the forest and find your legs and your left arm. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know what I mean? You're used to that side of the burden. So one was the fact that you were able to help me get to that stage where I could share. And then I think the one thing that always stood out to me the most is that Prince child, that I forget that piece, but
Camel Lion Child.
Yeah.
From Nietzsche.
I really feel like my biggest takeaway from those sessions was that I was moving to more of a teacher stage, right? That I was moving toward more of I want to tell people what to think and that, what I'm thinking, I guess. And that's really played out to be very true. And so what's great is that, I think we go through our life trying to find a basis of confirmation. We do it through our degrees. We do it through the people that we form relationships, who we decide to marry, what car we decide to drive. In a lot of ways, you help me create a foundation for who I'm supposed to be next, and help me confirm my own intuitions around that, but also help me understand that, there are still some fixed things in this universe, right? Like, I can overthink my physics. So you kind of help me keep my physics in check. And then at the same time, like, you're kind of brutal on like, yeah, dude, you can keep playing with that, keep juggling with that axe, and eventually it's going to cut your hand off. You know what I mean? And, sometimes your clients will be stupid and be like, yeah, I'm going to keep playing with it. And you're like, yeah, I know. And then, hands cut off. And you're like, oh, fine. And then you're there going like, all right, now let's talk about why that hurt, and so it's like, because we're not, the leaders were stubborn.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we got to the way we got. And then it wasn't, it was shortly after that I decided to step back from the company, and realize what and there was so many things that we just didn't know. We still didn't know. But that's okay. Like what was great is we didn't know anything, and we got, 20 years into the business, or 7 or 15 years, you know what I mean? That's a huge thing, right? So, huzzah! Like, most people die at year 6. You made it, right? And then the second is, you never spent a dime on marketing and you're still here. Okay, that's interesting. Third is, there was just good things we had, and it was, a lot of it was connected to our collective passion. And as my passion shifted, I felt like I was, doing a disservice to the company, when in reality, I was just actually moving to the next thing I was supposed to do.
Yeah. So, it was all right there, dude.
To get to that, man, I absolutely, I wouldn't be this way. I wouldn't be animated like this if it wasn't for you, Chris. You know what I'm saying?
Dude, it's so encouraging to hear that, because I know for me, what was such a delight, and I think this is really cool to emphasize with people, when we went into like the imaginative part of the work, like you were totally tracking on the pattern stuff where,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit what came up in the Twitter spaces, Robert Keegan's stuff. That's
Yep.
socialized mind, self-authoring, self-transforming. That is Camel Lion Child.
Yeah.
And I'm just connecting dots there. But when we went into the imaginative piece, what happened was you were already traversing that territory.
Yeah.
And so that for me was so rewarding because it's like, oh, I know this. I come here often. And now we're focusing this work in a beautiful way to get all the juice out of it we can. And that speaks a ton to your ability to be fluid. Speaking of fluids and fluidity, tell me what your favorite tiki drink is, because I know you're a tiki drink master, and why they can't make one at a restaurant and it's not an actual tiki drink.
My favorite tiki drink is a Suffering Bastard. It is a gin-based tiki drink. That's a rare thing in the tiki world. It's got cucumber, it's got gin, it has a little bit of rum, and it has a little bit of something else. But it's super yummy. You drink like 3 of those things, and it'll be just good to go.
Or not go.
You're not going to be able to find it, or I would not even recommend a bartender to even try it unless they have done it. But there is a tiki bar up in Powell that makes it. I forget that place. That one up there, but it's at the Haiku or whatever. Yeah, it's that's probably one of my favorite drinks. You can't go wrong with the Mai Tai.
And restaurants think they're making a Mai Tai, but they're not, because why?
What now?
Well, restaurants think they're making a Mai Tai very often.
Oh, God, they're not.
Because why?
They're not using the right rums. They're not using the right ratios. They're not using fresh juice. They're not using the right orgot. Yeah, I mean, there's just an abomination across the board. You're better off going just an old fashioned and praying to God that they got that right, I think if you're gonna do tiki, you want to go to. Well, here's a couple of surefire ways. One, go to a classic downtown bar or someplace that has a hip younger crowd that might, where the drinks are definitely 15 each or something like that. Sometimes you can tell. If the drinks are 17 each, they better be able to do a 17 freaking Mai Tai. Otherwise, they should be strangled, right? But, and then the other drink to get to, which should be good if you're doing tiki stuff, is like, well, of course, the zombie. I mean, the zombie, you can't go wrong with that. I mean, that's got, 4 different liqueurs in it. But, and that's another thing on my list, Chris. I actually have a cocktail book. It's called, Return of the Gypsy Queen, where it's about a guy who he gets captured by a gypsy queen, and then he's forced to be a mixologist whenever they go out on the fair, and he makes all his drinks up on the original. So,
dude,
that'll be fun.
You got to make that.
I know.
May they build the AI that can plug into you and mine, our creativity, and keep up. Let's freaking go.
It's actually evolving, because on Twitter Spaces, we've been working as a group to actually build a platform along the way. So we've been actually building a transcripting tool, and then harvest your content. And it's really exciting to see just the progression of things happening regardless of and that's why I think it's going to be interesting, is we're going to get into, execution is collapsing, but at the same time, there is sort of this notion of the multi-threaded. We're going into a multi-threaded existence where more things are cascading and happening, and once you get, you see that with people in financial literacy. Like once they cross over a threshold level where they understand their risk and safety sort of correlations, and they fall into the positive favor, their whole mindset changes in terms of enablement, right? So there's different trends I can see online of what people are trying to focus people on, and it's cool to see that empowerment is at the center of it all.
It's happening. I want to close with a description, and I want to see how it speaks to you. Hopefully it doesn't feel reducing, but connecting. You, to me, when I hear you talk about the future, it's like listening to Alan Watts talk about expansive potential. You are like the Alan Watts of future and technology. How does that land with you?
That's actually great. I love watching Alan Watts. I watch him a lot, actually.
Yeah.
I
That,
mean, that's the other thing. You kind of turned me onto that when I would talk a little bit. You would sort of tell me, "Oh, that's a lot like this or a lot like that." And another friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, Mark, I would talk with him a lot about stuff, and he's like, "Oh, that's Lazao. You're giving me Lazao this and that." And so I'm always sort of being connected to like another great philosopher. And so in a
yeah,
lot of ways, I feel like I thread from all of them in some ways because I'll mention things and there'll be sort of like a truth that was from someplace, but I never heard it before. You know what I mean? I didn't riff on that. It was
totally.
it's another translational aspect pull, and so I love that, but at the same time, I also feel like I'm a noob because it's kind of like it's like you meet some kid who's like, man, he knows all of the Darth Vader lines, but he's never seen Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like that's not something that's easily
Dude,
understood.
no, I mean, the thing for me is I have to, putting books out there, I say things that I discovered just like I know you're discovering it. I felt it. I conceived it. I received it, maybe is a better way
Yeah,
of saying it.
exactly.
But I might find where somebody said it a different way or a
Yeah,
similar way, because really that's what's happening. And the reason I want to be a practitioner and not an academic
yeah,
is because I want to say it how I want to say it and not have to footnote it because it
yeah,
hit me in my head and heart.
yep,
And we
yep,
track on a similar path, I know, on this. And so I
yeah,
think I would say it this way. We need your voice
hmm
to keep us from our mediocrity and small thinking,
yeah.
the
And what's
slipstream
great
of
is that
Dan's consciousness.
yeah, and what's great is that I've reached a point where I've recognized that I need my voice.
Mm,
So I've gotten to the point where it's like, you know what? Where is my book? I got to go write that damn thing. You know what I mean?
you do. You
So
do.
that's what's exciting. And I got to say, once I got on Twitter Spaces and started talking to more, I got just so many people. Chris would just say, Dan, I just have to tell you that you have an exceptional mind. You know what I mean? Like that
Mm,
is just something. It helps me see that the frequency isn't localized. That's probably one of the bigger takeaways is that my frequency can reach if it gets in the right medium. But if you don't get outside your local medium, you may actually think your frequency is your local medium, and that is not correct. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. There's too many people, I think, suffering
Yeah,
because they haven't found
yeah,
the frequency within, the local medium within, so they can courageously have a secure identity and go out and build their community.
correct.
You
Yeah,
and I are seeking to do that and build that community, but it's got to be built on the foundation of people who have come to the conclusion,
right.
I need to have my own voice. The
Yeah,
purity, the unfiltered, unshameable part of who I am. And Dan, this was such a treat. I'm so glad you came on. People that want to find you, we've talked about Twitter and you gave
yep.
them your email. Can you tell them your Twitter and email one more time in case they want
Yeah,
to go get that?
online, I'm at floozySpeak.com. That's right, FLOOZYSPEAK. I'll explain that to you someday. And then Dan at BigKittyLabs.com. You can find me there. Sweet.
Beautiful.
Chris,
Thank you
thanks
for
for
being
having
here,
me,
my
man.
friend. So
Always.
much.